Good evening and welcome to the news tonight on NDTV Hindu. I'm Evelyn Matthew. Now, this Tuesday night might spell some glum news for you if you have made plans of buying a car or a plush home space. That is, it becomes a tad more difficult. The Reserve Bank of India dropped a larger than expected bomb today. That's half percentage point to 8% in the repo rates. That's gone up, in fact, hoping to tame a demand-led inflation. But that means our much trusted lenders, the banks, will have no choice but to pass on the additional cost to you and I. Vagish, deputy editor with the Hindu business line, Abdul Majid, partner with Price Waterhouse from his office, joins us this evening. I've got Mr. Gurjot Pal Singh, operational manager with bankbazaar.com, here in our studios. All of us will try and make some sense of it all and how you and I, as customers, can really pave through this in an easy way, more or less, after this discussion tonight. Before we go across to them, let's take you through the headlines we're tracking. How much longer till textbooks and a proper syllabus reach our children? The apex court verdict is awaited as the state calls it an injustice. A. Raja now says he didn't mean to implicate the Prime Minister in the 2G scam, but Dr. Manmohan Singh chose not to set up a group of ministers. Raja also says he showed the Attorney General the press note. Vahanvati hits back saying Raja's charges are rubbish. Vigilance officials search residences of senior police officials and bureaucrats in the city after complaints of land misuse. The RBI hikes rates once again, this time by 0.5%. Get ready to pay more for home and car loans. Tiny tot Arif is still missing. Last seen with a beggar in Oteri. The cops gather leads into the kidnap case. Police zero in on a suspect after a DMDK worker was hacked to death last afternoon in front of his son. Tamil Nadu's government exchange website needs a reboot as internet cafes charge higher rates for browsing. Veteran actor Ravi Chandran is no more and put to rest. The chief minister who once shared screen space with him pays her respects. And take a cue from this mama-to-be, snooker champ Vidya Pillai claims her 6th national title before she moves on to represent Karnataka next. Let's also take you through some of the news making national headlines at this hour. Still defiant and refusing to quit, Karnataka's chief minister says the Prime Minister should quit first, as many in his cabinet are corrupt. The government allows Sister Jean to stay indefinitely after the nun working with leprosy patients was asked to leave after 30 years. And Pakistan's new Foreign Minister Hina Rabbani is in the capital. Ahead of the Foreign Ministers meeting, the Foreign Secretaries held discussions today. The top story tonight we're tracking: get ready to pay more for a car or even a house as the RBI has hiked the key rates. The Reserve Bank of India today raised the repo rates, the short-term lending rates, by 0.5% to 8%. The hike in repo rate is more than consensus expectations of 0.25% hike, but this is the 11th time since March 2010 that the RBI has raised interest rates, making it the longest rate hike cycle in nearly a decade. The RBI has been, in fact, increasing interest rates in a bid to contain the rising inflation, but welcoming the Reserve Bank's decision to hike key rates by a hefty 50 basis points, the Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee said it will help bringing down inflation to a comfortable level of 6 to 7% by the year end. But this hike means lending rates of banks is set to increase, which means consumers will have higher loan rates, and home loan EMIs as well will get much pricier once the banks set their base rate.
These are to maintain an interest rate environment that moderates inflation and anchors inflation expectations, to manage the risk of growth falling significantly below trend, and finally, to manage liquidity to ensure that monetary transmission remains effective without exerting undue stress on the financial system.
Well, the big question we are asking tonight is the RBI rate hikes. Is it a pain or is it a gain? Joining me once again is Mr. Vagish, deputy editor with the Hindu business line. He joins us from our Hindu studios. Mr. Abdul Majid, the partner with Price Waterhouse, joins us from his office space. And here back in our studios, we have Gurjot Pal Singh, operational manager with bankbazaar.com. Welcome to all of our guests tonight. First to you, Mr. Vagish. Now, you and I may be quite well versed with, the repo rate and the reverse repo rate, but just break it down for some of our viewers who are perhaps watching this maybe for the first time. What does it really mean and how important is it to you and I?
The RBI's repo rate is basically its signaling device. When the RBI sets the repo rate and the reverse repo rate, the other banks in the system, they take the cue and they follow the signals that the RBI lays down. So, in the last about one year and 3 months, we have had about 10 hikes, and now this is the 11th hike today. Now, banks have also followed up on each of these hikes, and overall most customers of banks would have noticed that their home loan rates and their car loan rates have gone up by anywhere between 2 percentage points to 2.5 percentage points, so roughly 250 basis points. So, whatever the RBI does is quickly it's translated into a lending rate hike by various banks. So, that is why the hike by RBI today is important.
Right. Now, when the RBI, Mr. Singh, when the RBI and the common man comes into this picture, why should the common man be, paying more attention now to this, considering today's situation?
Well, RBI increased the repo rate by 25 BPS in June. So, banks immediately followed it up with an increase in early July. And we expect the banks to again follow it up with a rate hike, which is going to be significantly more early in August. So, it will be definitely affecting the common man. It will be affecting the new borrower as well as anybody who has already borrowed. So, it will be affecting the both set of people, and they have to make their decisions, their EMIs and everything is affected by this decision by RBI.
Right. So, while we look at this, considering, there have been 10 hikes before, are we looking at a scary situation considering, a retail borrower is concerned? Do you think more hikes are perhaps also likely in the near future? When will this tug of war really end?
Well, looking at the amount of hike which has come this time and the posture of the regulator, which is quite anti-inflationary, they have very clearly mentioned that the future policy would depend on the course, the route which inflation takes. But we do not expect the rates to go down in the present financial year as of now. So any retail borrower, any new retail borrower who's planning to borrow at this point in time will have to base his decision on that. Either he would be able to borrow it now at a higher rate, or is he ready to wait for a duration of say 9 to 12 months to 15 months and wait for the rate to go down, for the inflation to go down, then the rate to go down, and then go for his decision of borrowing.
All right. Let me just bring in Mr. Abdul Majid, who is a partner with Price Waterhouse. So now, just looking at India's story, it is a story that is more or less consumption driven. But now with the RBI wanting to reduce the demand, are we then looking at a situation where the fundamentals of this whole story by itself needs to be questioned?
Not really, I think, because the Indian economy is going to be consumption driven. There is no doubt about it. It's going to be in that way because we really don't have much of exports. Yes, I think one of the issue what RBI is dealing with these inflation, because inflation obviously I think 4-5% inflation we really cannot imagine now. I think the government itself has realized that 7 or 6 to 7% is a what benchmark. But when the inflation goes about 10 to 12% in those ranges, it's obviously going to impact the common man in a much bigger way. And as you know, in India, almost half of your population is below poverty line. I think that's one of the concern what I think the regulators or probably RBI need to take into account. So I think this sort of measures are going to be around in the economy like us, where we are the developing economy. So liquidity, I think management is going to be extremely important, and monetary policies are going to always keep in mind the inflation. So I really don't think so we're going to have any kind of fundamental shift as such. Yes, there will be some sort of negative factors, and obviously there will be some impact on the growth, especially if you look at automotive sector. Obviously the cash flow is what is important, and in India the typical thing is that almost about 75 to 80% of the people buy the vehicle by financing. So obviously any increase in 1%, 2%, and what we have seen in the last, is 2.5 to 3 percentage point, it's obviously going to be a negative impact, and customer will hold back till I think the interest rates settle down to, let's say, below maybe I think 9% or below kind of 8 to 9%.
Right, Mr. Majid, just if you can throw some more light on, the number of sectors that really comprise this growth story. Which do you think will be some of the sensitive sectors, looking at the different industries?
I think if you look at almost all industries today, I think the economy, like us, I think where a lot of people do depend upon to realize their dream, also borrowings. I think you look at housing, you look at automotive. Even it's going to impact the corporates as well, because obviously I think many of the corporates are trying to expand in a significant way because the growth is there. So obviously I think it will impact their plan too in terms of how much they want to borrow. And more than that, I think apart from borrowing, there will be liquidity crisis as well, because bankers will become much more stricter when they start looking at the credit worthiness of the customer, because the more and more you have the the cash flow which one has to really meet on a monthly basis, the bank will always try to hold back. I think the liquidity will dry up all of a sudden. So I think it's going to have wider implication on many sectors in my view.
All right, so it is going to be quite a widespread impact. Then I request you to stay with us, Mr. Majid, Mr. Singh, as well as Mr. Vagish. We'll slip into a very short break, but we'll come back and talk about more issues that comes with the impact of today's big story.